Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. I want you to take a second. Think about all the vehicles on the road. How many of them are trucks? How many of them are large trucks? How many of them are tankers? And the infrastructure that we have in our transportation system, there's got to be some kind of rules and regulations, and there are. But there's also got to be some way to adhere to them, and that's where this gentleman and his company come in. He is the man that transportation companies hire to make sure that they comply with those laws, and he does it very effectively, not only in this country, but even outside of this country, even in the manufacturing of some of those cargo tankers. Matt Freeman is with DOT Training Solutions, and he's back with us today. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Hey, good morning, Steve. I'm doing great. How you been?
Real good. I always learn what's going on the roads through you and the insight. And really the word of the day and the foundation, I would say, for your company is compliance. Compliance.
Yes.
We're going to take that to some newer levels with our guest today. Who do we have with us?
Hey, this is Cody Wilson. He's one of the newest members on our team. He's a compliance specialist for us. So I'll let Cody. We're going to talk about some of the proposed rules that are coming down the pipe with FMCSA, the Federal Road Carrier Safety Administration. And Cody, I'll let you introduce yourself real quick here. We'll jump in.
Welcome, Cody.
Hey, good to meet you. Thank you, sir. Good to meet you, Steve. Cody Wilson. I've got over 2 decades of Title 49 DOT investigations and vehicle inspections, and seen a lot. Seen big carriers, seen small carriers, seen a lot of things over the years. So glad to be a part of the team and part of the discussion today.
Awesome. Hey, before we get into some of the new regulations and such, you've got a lot of experience in conducting DOT investigations, vehicle inspections. What does that look like? I just want to get like the lay of the land, that part of your life. What was that like?
For the most part, it was in terminal, going to those motor carriers' places of business and evaluating their safety protocols, on the documentation side. And we would do the terminal vehicle inspections on the trucks and trailers and such, looking for those out of service violations, those unsafe criteria, and we would write up an inspection report on those vehicles as well. The investigation side, we would wear 2 hats. We'd wear a state hat and we'd wear a federal hat. So depending on the criteria for the assignment, we'd go in and look for those unsafe behaviors, look for the deficiencies in their safety protocols and procedures, and we would write up a report. Sometimes those reports were not favorable for the carrier. Oftentimes they ended in prosecution for unsafe behavior and unsafe standing. So at the end of the day, wanted to get those people, the carrier's attention to try to modify behavior to get safety as the emphasis for their operation.
Wow. Big responsibility, kind of curious. How deep did it go? For example, did you often find a lot of safety violations being out there in the field?
Every day.
Wow.
Every day. Now, it could range from very severe breakdown in safety to some minor things. But every day, when we would visit some business, we would find something every day.
Do you feel overall with these trucking companies that it was ignorance? Or they were just ignoring it? Or, they cared, but they really didn't care. What do you think?
That's a good question. It's a combination of both. Not always a combination for each person, but oftentimes it would be ignorance of regulation. And bless their heart, they had all good intentions. They just didn't have the background or good advice to get started on the right foot. And oftentimes we would find carriers who might cut corners and just there was an intentional disregard for regulation. But oftentimes it was a combination of both. And unfortunately, as the government would say, there's no ignorance. It's not an excuse.
Gotcha. Matt's in the room. Let's pretend he's not listening. This is why I see what he does being so important, because you're identifying it, that a lot of these companies might not know what they should be doing. Mm-hmm. I mean, as the person from the outside looking in, driving down the road, seeing the big 80,000-pound tractor trailer cruising along there, at 55, 65 miles an hour, I just assume that it's taken care of and these companies know what should be done because that's their life's work, but apparently not. Do you think it's because there's so many different regulations, there's so much to be done, or they just don't dig deep enough to really realize what should be done in terms of safety?
It's a huge body of information. That's the difficult part. And to add to that, it's always in transition. It's always changing. So it's very tough to stay on top of Title 49. It is. It's a catalog. It looks like, I'll show my age here. It looks like the old Sears and Roebuck catalogs. It's several inches thick.
Like a phone book.
That's right. That's right. And motor carriers are expected to know it. And on top of that, it does change. As we'll discuss a little bit today, it's always evolving, and that's a good thing. When FMCSA looks at something that's not working or something that needs tweaked, that's a good thing to look and say, let's see if we can change this to reduce injuries and crashes.
Part of what you've done is those DOT investigations. Would you have been called to accidents, situations to be part of that part of the?
One of the aspects of our duties, we were strictly in terminal. And so we looked at a lot of accident reports and causation, and we analyzed a lot of crash analysis type reports. But we wouldn't be the emergency responder on scene necessarily.
Gotcha. Okay. So really kind of piecing things together and figuring out why this particular situation happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Wow.
After the fact, kind of connecting the dots and looking at the evidence of why and the causation of. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So there's a lot being proposed with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Where do you want to start?
I'll defer to Matt. He's back in the room.
Welcome back, Mac. How you doing?
Thanks. Glad to join you guys.
Yeah, fantastic.
We got a lot. We have a great team here. Cody's on our team now, and we're excited to have him. And just the knowledge he brings, we just kind of heard some of that there. He was also a compliance guy like I was. But we have a lot of things here, and some of the things that Cody said that the government does go back and look at things. They go back and look, and I say things, they go back and look at the rules and regulations and see where they need to be enhanced or, somehow worked or tweaked with, to make things better. And some of these things that are coming down the pipe, potentially can be future regulations or changes, or some of the things here that are proposed rules. We're real careful about talking about those because they're not a rule yet, but these are things that they're looking at doing. And some of these rules, they allow folks to the industry to comment, and they give them a comment period on some of these things. So I'll let Cody, we discussed these pretty heavily this morning. I'll let him talk about some of them that are coming up here.
Why don't we break it down to speed? How about let's start there, because I think that could be a big factor in situations. There's something coming down the freeway in regards to speed changes, right?
There's a proposal that, if I could speak in hillbilly terms, a governor on speed limiters. Again, it's just a proposal. There's several coming out, and it May, June is kind of when we'll have more information. So at this point, it's just kind of an idea that they may want to change the regulation. And so with these speed limiters, and if I've got the right terminology there, Matt, correct me. It is exactly what the name is. It limits how fast that big truck and trailer can move down that highway. Excuse me. To kind of correlate with, Matt, help me out here. Yeah. Would you say the ELD kind of is the driving force behind some of this?
I think so, yes. Because, these guys, we've talked in the past, Steve, about, they have so much time. They can only drive so long. They can only be on duty so long, and they have to be from point A to point B in a certain amount of time and do it legally. And I think some of this here, some of these speed limiters in different state rules, that require large rigs to only go so fast on their highways and roadways. So with these speed limiters, I think there's a lot to play into that on both sides.
When we say speed, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say I could piggyback onto that a little bit when I mentioned ELD, electronic logging devices. So that rule came out, and ultimately, the trucking industry anything newer than year 2000 had to have the ELD by mandate. And so what they have found was drivers are very concerned about that 11 and 14-hour rule, not exceeding those limitations. And so what that caused was an increase in unfair or unsafe driving incidents, primarily speeding. So they were concerned about not exceeding their time limit. So they were driving faster. The University of Arkansas just recently did a study that showed that the ELD mandate has not necessarily reduced crashes, and it has contributed to an increase in unsafe driving incidents. And so I think that's why FMCSA is kind of looking to look at the CLD rule again and see with technology advances to see if we can get it applied to the older vehicles as well. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the speed limiter kind of comes into play. It's all part of the same equation of what's the causation of these crashes.
When we say speed limiter, is it electronically exactly what it sounds like, something that would stop the vehicle from going past a certain speed?
And at this point, Matt, I don't have the information on what the actual device would look like, but that's what I assume it would be.
Is that what it does?
Yeah. Basically, that's what you're looking at. You had different governors on the larger trucks and only allow them to go a certain, they can't go past a certain speed. That's what we're talking about here. They'll have to have some type of electronic device that's going to limit that speed. Now, if they're set at 65, 70, 75 mile an hour, whatever that cutoff is, that's as fast they're going to go. And so that's the same kind of system here, what's a governor? It's a speed limiter.
Yeah. And for the rest of us, logically we say, look at the size of that vehicle. Don't go so fast. But on the back end, time is money. Somebody's running behind. You try to push it, another 10, 15 miles an hour, just trying to get there because you got to go to the unload, next stop, on and on and on. So I'm sure that's what's at play. The braking, tell us about that automatic braking system, something being changed there. How does that go?
Yeah, Cody, jump in.
The way I understand it, and the technology is fairly new. Some of the larger truck manufacturers have it in their vehicles. I don't have the names of the manufacturers at my fingertips, but ultimately, as I understand it, the system would detect potential crashes and immediately apply the brakes. I've talked to some drivers who absolutely hate it, and then some that said, "Yeah, it actually saved me from a crash." So it's whether it's a detection, and I'm a hillbilly from the Midwest, so I don't have all the technology lingo, but it would basically detect rate of speed, the proximity of something out front,
sure,
and apply those brakes.
Yeah, a lot of cars, newer cars, have that now. Uses sonar, whatever it might be. Quite honestly, I got a newer car about a month ago. I see it checked off on the dashboard when you go through. I have yet to, not that I want to get close to the vehicle in front of me, but, sometimes somebody put on their brakes and I'm like, well, I'm a car length and change away. It hasn't gone on yet, but I have friends that say that theirs have. They haven't been in crashes, but they felt the brakes get applied when they're getting a little too close. So it would make sense. Why not have that on bigger vehicles? But to your knowledge, Matt, is that on some trucks now? And now they're looking to make that more widespread?
I can't speak for any specific truck, but the technology in these vehicles, it would not surprise me if it's not there already in some of these vehicles.
Sure.
I see so many different years. And the one thing I haven't been up on is some of the brand new stuff coming out that we're still looking into the technology and things, with our customers as they get them and things that are coming out there, get the autonomous vehicles and all the new technology that is coming out with these vehicles. It wouldn't surprise me that if everything is fully electric, camera controlled with all the different sensors on them now today as the future goes on.
What about logging? I hear that is one of the rules that are being proposed, changing the way that's done. What can you tell us there?
So,
you want me to jump that? You got it, Matt?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, jump in there.
No, I was just going to say, when the ELD first came out around the 2017, 2018 time frame when it became the mandate, they just didn't have the technology to retrofit these older vehicles. The older vehicles, which would be pre-year 2000, they weren't able to install what they call an electronic control module, an ECM device. Well, now here we are almost a decade later, the technology they've gotten out, they say, yes, we can do that. So that's what this new proposal coming up this summer is they're going to look at to say, is this feasible? Is this something that we can do and retrofit America's fleets?
What would it do? Basically, what would that electronic logging device do?
And basically what the electronic logging device does for these older vehicles, the trucking industry, truckers forever, for the last 60, 70 years, would use a paper logbook. And so with the ELD mandate, it did away with the logbook for the most part, and everything was a touch screen electronic device. And so those year 2000 and older trucks, they did not have to abide by the mandate because they didn't have the technology. And now they're saying, yes, we're going to get everybody on the same page. Wow. Everybody's going to have an ELD. And that's the goal.
What's some of the information that gets retained within the logging?
That's a good question. Logbooks by regulation, by Part 395.8, it requires retention for 6 months of your log. And so there's 4 grids. It records and it's all concerned with fatigue. How long has this driver been awake? Sleep studies have been done to see fatigue studies to see, can they still focus at so much time? That's why these regulations are in place. But it records the on-duty time when they're not driving. That could be checking their load, dropping off, unloading, just supervising the vehicle. Then obviously there's drive time. It's going to record how much time they're driving. And then for trucks with a sleeper berth where the driver can get his rest, there's a sleeper berth line, and then there's an off-duty line. And so those 4 grid lines is what is recorded in that 24-hour window.
Wow. So important in the eyes of the layman here. Yes. Would it record things like speed, location, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. With the new ELD systems, they're integrated with GPS to where they know where that driver and that truck is, or where the truck is at all times. And it does record, engine hours. Speed depends on the system, and there's a lot of different vendors out there. But yes, with this new technology, it can record all of the above.
I mean, I have to imagine it's easy enough because my insurance company, State Farm, if you want to save 10% or whatever, you just take this little module and just stick it to your rear view mirror. Just leave it right there. And it knows. It's amazing. And it's obviously cheap because they send it for free. But they know how you brake, when you brake, where you're driving, your speed, how you corner. I'm not making this up. It's on the app. I'm like, it's almost like scary. Big Brother is watching, but if you wanna get 10%, or it ranges. The first 6 months is 10%, and then after that, then it looks at how you're driving, and it could be 3% you get off. You could get 10% if you're driving really well. So the technology, it seems like it's emerging pretty fast, and definitely in the trucking industry. In these proposed changes, anything else that we're missing here that's coming down the road?
I think these are the primary ones that are coming up. They're always every 6 months somewhere in the federal regulations, not just DOT but different regulations. They have updates, and when we're talking to folks, we always try to make sure that we got, about every 6 months we have a new regulation book just in case there are changes. But these proposed rulings is what you look for to see when they actually go into play, and they'll usually have a date on them saying the effect date. Things need to be or are going to be mandated, so that's what you look out for. Some of these, when you get, depending on what the rulings are, get pretty heated. So they may have a couple comment periods, and really want to get so the industry can submit comment on those rules. There's certain things there that they can be quicker, or they can take a little longer. Sometimes it feels like all of a sudden one day it's like, wow, it appeared. Didn't realize, but there are time frames and dates that they say, hey, when these rules will go into effect. You just got to read that small print sometimes.
Wow. As a trucking company owner, I can see why you need to have an advocate like your company, because this is changing very fast. There's aside from just the inspection to make sure that you're adhering to it, but all of these new things, like to your point, the book, the amount of information that's in that book, who's got time for that?
Sure.
These companies just throw it to you and just take care of it, make sure we're safe, we don't get fines, our reputation is maintained, and there it is.
And I would like to piggyback on that if I could. All these regulations, the concern shouldn't be fines and penalties so much as it's a minimum standard. It's a minimum standard that carriers are established. Go beyond that minimum standard is my advice. Just because you're compliant with a regulation doesn't mean you're safe. So that would be my advice to every motor carrier is the regulations aren't the top goal. That's your baseline that you should aim for, and you should be aiming higher than that.
That's a great point when you think about the age of the vehicles, where some of the vehicles in service are considerably old, so they can only start at the baseline because, like you said, the newer ones have to be, or the older ones have to be retrofitted if they can be. Yeah, you got a newer vehicle, it's got the technology, it's got the capability to add things in, but the older ones can't so much, but still have a baseline. Why not strive for more? Higher safety levels, the best for all of us. Matt, the best way to find you and start the process for all of us, we just go to your website for a consult?
Yeah, go to my website, go to our information line, and reach out to us. Every day we're checking these emails on and do the daily basis, so we're always returning calls. So
DOTtrainingsolutions.com. The more we get together, the more I see how complicated this is. It's not just a truck going down the road transporting some things. There's a lot going into that, and part of that is the safety for all of us. Matt and Cody, thank you so much for being here today and bringing this to light. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks again, Steve.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
All right, see you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Let's go inside the mind of a 10-year-old.
I should have worn those earrings today. I like those earrings. Gabby has those awesome earrings. I need to ask her where she got those, but that's just what she would want me to do. I'll have Michaela ask her for me.
Buckle up, Sarah.
Yeah, but then Michaela will be like, why don't you just ask her yourself? That's just like Michaela.
Sarah, buckle up.
Michaela's such a great name. I wish I was called Michaela. There's like a dozen Sarahs in my class.
Hey, we're not hitting the road until you buckle up, honey.
Oh yeah, seatbelt. I forget sometimes because my brain is like busy, I wonder if there's pizza at school today.
Sometimes it can be tough to get through to your kids, but it's not impossible. Always make sure they're wearing their seatbelts, even on short drives. Remember, you have the keys, you have the power. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup for more information.